It's Fernando Ruiz Art.
Hi everybody, it's retro review time again, and today we're going to resume our look at X-Men history by checking out another milestone issue. We're going to be looking today at X-Men number 4, and this is a big issue for many reasons. The last time we did an X-Men retro review, we took a look at the issue before, which was X-Men number 3, and I pointed out that this was a real key issue. In fact, I kind of regard it as one of the most important issues of the X-Men. Because this is, and yeah, it's the first appearance of the Blob, but there's more to this issue than that. This is really the issue, and I explained this in that video, so I'm going to link to that video in the description below. And for anyone who missed that video, check it out, because we do cover a lot of important points of X-Men lore that were introduced here. But the main point that I mentioned about this issue is that this is the first issue where the X-Men really start to act like X-Men. In issues 1 and 2, they were really, even though they were mutants, and the mutant situation, as it were, was talked about and mentioned, it really wasn't a big factor until this issue. In this issue, the X-Men really start to actively seek out other mutants, and it goes horribly wrong, but they actively seek out other mutants, and they become really the mutant policemen. So that starts here. Plus, we do get the first glimpses of some important character traits. Like Cyclops being tortured by his own power, the beginnings of the attraction between Cyclops and Jean Grey, Marvel Girl. That happens for the first time here. We also start getting the very first appearance of Beast as an exceptionally smart person. So all that begins here. Now, today we're looking at issue 4, and this is also one of the most important issues in X-Men history. In fact, this is really one of the most important books of the early Marvel age. So much happens in this issue, as you can tell from the cover. This is the first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and that's the title of the story inside, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And we see this is also the second appearance of Magneto. We saw him for the first time in X-Men number 1. He was the first villain that the team fights. And at the time, he tried to take over an army base. The X-Men show up. They thwart him, and he flees at the end. He gets away. Now we meet his team, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So this is the first appearance of the Brotherhood and of the members, who are all important characters in their own right. Of course, we have Magneto's lackey, the Toad, Mastermind, and I'm going to talk about Mastermind in this issue, because Mastermind really gets a bad rap often. Here on this cover, he seems to be miscolored. His outfit is green on the cover, and inside, and for most of his history, his outfit would be brown. We have Magneto there. Then the first appearance of two very important characters, Quicksilver. Quicksilver, oddly enough, Quicksilver should be green, and his outfit here is kind of miscolored. I don't know if that's due to the reprint, or if it was like that on the original cover. But in addition to Quicksilver, we also have, of course, the famous Scarlet Witch. And for someone named the Scarlet Witch, she is very definitely miscolored. Here she is the Green Witch. So they all first appear here. So let's dive in to the issue. And we have the first page, the title page, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and we have a pretty nice splash page. I gotta say, these early issues of the X-Men, whatever you may think of the art, which gets kind of inconsistent. Jack Kirby's involved, but he gets different inkers. In this case, it's Jack Kirby being inked by Paul Reinman. Paul Reinman sometimes gets a bad rap. He would eventually pencil on his own, and he was a better penciler than a lot of people give him credit for. I know a lot of people aren't fans, but I think he did some nice work. He was certainly capable of very nice work sometimes. But the X-Men always like to start out with these very nice group shots of the whole team, and this is a cool one. And once again, we start out with a nice little Danger Room sequence, which, as I've mentioned in past videos, these little Danger Room training sessions at the beginning of each issue, these were a great way to introduce people to the team. Remember, this is only the X-Men's 4th issue, so they're a relatively new book. And I believe at this point in their publishing history, they were bi-monthly. So you didn't really, the world hadn't had a lot of opportunity to really meet these characters. Incidentally, here we have a shot of Beast erroneously wearing gloves here, as seemed to happen from time to time. Yeah, and I should have mentioned on the splash, he's wearing gloves as well. And he sort of loses those gloves in the middle of the story. We got a lot of Iceman action here. And interestingly enough, following their training session, the X-Men have some cake to celebrate 1 year since they've formed. They say Professor X says it has been exactly 1 year since our class began, and I felt the date should be celebrated. Now, that's an interesting statement because in issue 1 is when Jean Grey formally joins the X-Men. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to believe it's been a whole year since issue 1. Which actually, in terms of real time, might be, because as I said, this was a bi-monthly book. That we're on issue 4, so issue 1 was probably about 8 months earlier. So if we were following real time, it could have been close to a year. But we also saw in issue 1 that the rest of the team had been together for some time. And it's strongly implied that most of the X-Men are about 18, Hank being the oldest and Bobby at 16 being the youngest. So that's interesting. I don't, of course, back then they played fast and loose with dates and time. So we'll never really know, and that could be left open to interpretation. Okay. So we get to meet the Brotherhood, and their roles are pretty much classically established almost right away, with Toad being kind of this sloppy toad for Magneto, Quicksilver being kind of hot-tempered and very loyal to and fanatically protective of his sister. The Scarlet Witch is described as being this beautiful, exceptionally beautiful girl. Her power at the time is pretty simple in that when she points, bad luck happens. Okay, later on, of course, that would get retooled. She would learn actual magic, and she would become a literal witch, not just a witch in name only. Now, I talked about Mastermind, and Mastermind really gets a a raw deal often. He's a pretty heavy hitter. He's an illusion-based villain. His powers are to create illusions, but we'll see here that's nothing to sneeze at. The problem with illusion-based villains is once you know that what they're doing is creating illusions, they got to be real clever when they go up against you, because otherwise you just know if it's mastermind, nothing is real. But he's more clever than that, and we'll see him in action. Also, too, we got to remember that historically, he is the guy who is largely behind the Dark Phoenix saga. He was the guy who kind of mentally tortured Jean Grey into becoming Dark Phoenix, and I know that's been retroactively revisited with a whole lot of Phoenix Force nonsense, which I can't stand. Okay, so let's dig into the story. Okay, so Magneto acquires an old freighter outfitted with weaponry, and he's out this time no less than to take over a country. So he's got himself a battleship. Go back to the X Mansion. The professor with Jean as his nurse apparently can perform medical examinations. Okay, he's smart. In those days, as long as you were smart, that's you could do anything. You're scientist, doctor, surgeon, everything. Okay, we get a glimpse in this issue, a little hint as to the origins, the beginnings of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and we get this story, and this would be revisited over and over, of how the Scarlet Witch had unintentionally started a fire that exposed her as a mutant, and her and Quicksilver were under attack by the angry mob, the pitchfork-carrying villagers, and it was Magneto who saved them. So, right from their first appearance, we get the hint that the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch aren't necessarily evil people. They're just kind of coerced into this supervillain team by Magneto. And it's also important to note that at this point, it has not been said that Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch are Magneto's children. That little bit of revisionism would come out in the early to mid 1980s in the Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries. It may have been hinted at before then, but it was never said straight out until the 80s, until just about 20 years after this story. So up till at this point, they're just twins being conned, really being coerced by Magneto. In fact, it should also be pointed out that, and this is only Magneto's second appearance, but at this point we have not seen Magneto without a helmet. So later on, it would be in the Neil Adams issues that we would first see that Magneto has white, silver hair similar to Quicksilver, which may have actually planted the seed to make them related. But that's not the case right here. Okay, so this tiny country of Santo Marco is being taken over by Magneto. Professor X, he hears of it, and he quickly assumes that it's the evil mutants. It's interesting also to know that they haven't met the evil mutants face to face, at least not in the 4 issues that we've read. But there has been mention of the X-Men being aware that there are evil mutants out there. And we saw that in issue 3. One of the reasons they wanted to get to the Blob is they were afraid that the Blob would get recruited by evil mutants. So it's interesting to speculate where did that fear of evil mutants come from. Okay, so we see the team in their civvies engaging in hobbies as the professor summons them. And now we're really knee deep into Hank McCoy being really smart. And remember, this was only a concept introduced in the last issue. Before then, Hank the Beast was pretty much your generic strongman of the team. Okay, so we see the X-Men get together. Interestingly enough, for the first time, we see some direct contact between Professor X and Magneto. Both of them can enter the astral plane and they can communicate. And we see the difference, the classic difference between the two, of how Magneto wants to take over the world, whereas Professor X wants mutants and humans to coexist and live in peace. And they're just not in agreement about that. So it's the first time. There's no hint that these two have met before, so that history between them of how they were friends at one point, that was also some revisionist history added later. At this point, they didn't know each other. Okay, so I talked about how Mastermind gets underestimated. And here, Mastermind helps Magneto take over this country with a whole army created by Mastermind. With this army that's storming this island is an illusion created by Mastermind. So as I said, he's nothing to sneeze at. So the Brotherhood takes over the island. They have their own country. So the professor, he takes the X-Men down to this country to help repel the evil mutants. Magneto's holed up in this castle, and Professor X, he draws up detailed plans, as we see there, for the X-Men to storm this castle and try and take down Magneto. The remainder of the issue is actually the X-Men doing that. It's the X-Men taking over this, or actually infiltrating, breaking into this castle, facing all sorts of thugs and henchmen and goons, and the evil mutants themselves. This would be the first time the X-Men would meet Quicksilver, the Scarlet Witch, Toad, and Mastermind. So they fight. They see Magneto's behind everything. So we get some good amount of action. And as I've said before, one of the things that I love in these early Marvel books is just the amount of story that you get in every issue. A story like this, where the Brotherhood takes over a whole country, this would probably be like a 10-part maxi series today. This would be the crossover event of the summer. They would involve the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, characters would die. Here, the whole thing takes up one issue, and it's great. It's great. It doesn't feel rushed. It's Silver Age pacing. There's a nice close-up of Cyclops letting loose with the optic beams. It's Silver Age pacing, so you get some choppiness to the pacing, but the story moves, and the story is there, and it's complete and it's tight. You gotta make allowances for some Silver Age silliness, and that's how it goes. Okay, so the X-Men are getting together. Now Magneto has this weapon that he's going to cut loose with. He's going to turn it on the X-Men. Professor X is leading the team in person. Okay, he's out in the field leading the team. And he ends up throwing himself from his wheelchair to take a blast to save Hank and some of the other X-Men. So the X-Men Professor X is taken out of the action here, And that's going to have repercussions well into the next issue. So the evil mutants are driven off, but the professor is left injured. And it appears he's lost his power as a result of the injury. So the issue wraps with the X-Men wondering what they're going to do. Now, spoiler alert, the professor's faking. It's interesting to note at this point in time, the professor really goes to some crazy lengths to teach his students a lesson, and that's what he's doing here. He's trying to test their independence, their resolve, their ability to take care of things on their own. And we would learn that, I believe, in the next issue, which is issue 5, which is actually called The Return of the Evil Mutants. So the fun with the Brotherhood doesn't end here. In fact, they become the mainstay villains for much of these early issues moving forward. And we'll take a look at that in upcoming episodes. So that's issue 4. That's issue 4 of X-Men. I hope you dug it. I hope you enjoyed it. In terms of a grade, yeah, I love this issue. I really do. This is one of my favorites. Like I said, I love the invasion. I love the tightness of the overall story. I gotta give this a good 4.5 because this is just a fun issue. I love the villains, the characters that are introduced. Magneto, the Quicksilver, and the Scarlet Witch are great characters right from the get-go. Mastermind is a great, sinister villain. Kind of drawn like to resemble Vincent Price, so I wonder if there was a little inspiration there. See, that's Vincent Price, isn't it? Or is it just me? Let me know in the comments below. So that's it for me. A 4.5, one of my favorite issues of the X-Men. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is one of my favorite villain teams. And I love this incarnation of them. They're terrific. They end up being great villains for the X-Men. And this is where they got their start. And it's always good to see Magneto in action. So, okay. So that's my thoughts on this issue. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this, please click like. Please subscribe if you haven't. And don't forget to hit that bell to be notified of future videos. And I hope to see you guys next time. Keep reading and keep drawing. Bye-bye, everybody.